Today on the Women Mind the Water Art of It series podcast on womenmindthewater.com, I'm speaking with Gabriel Forestieri and Meredith Sallee, who are partners in life as well as projectLIMB. Their dance company contributes to the development of underwater dance, and just as the name implies, the dance is performed while freediving. The couple's work is an expression of joy entwined with the beauty of the human body and nature. The Women Mind the Water Art of It series podcast on womenmindthewater.com engages artists in conversation about their work and explores their connection with the ocean. Through their stories, Women Mind the Water hopes to inspire and encourage action to protect the ocean and her creatures. On this podcast, I have the pleasure to speak with a creative and talented couple, Gabriel Forestieri and Meredith Sallee. In 2004, Gabriel set out on a mission to make dance that spoke to our relationship with the world. His work took him to landscapes as varied as beaches, rooftops, and subway stations. Along the way, he developed a passion for freediving. Freediving is done without mechanical devices, or more simply stated, with only the air contained in the lungs. Meredith is also an accomplished dancer and much more recently discovered freediving and underwater dance. The couple live in Sicily along with their toddler. The family travels to places around the globe, places like Thailand and the Caribbean island of Curacao, expressing their vision and making connections through underwater movement. I'm grateful to them for making time in their busy schedule to chat with me on the Women Mind the Water Art of It series podcast. The couple has amazing credentials. Gabriel, for example, has taught dance at prestigious places like Juilliard and the Joffrey Ballet. Meredith has worked as a professional dancer, dance educator, and studio manager. They are opening up new worlds for their underwater dance. So let me begin by asking Gabriel, when did you begin to explore the world through dance?
My practice with my body and with nature really began much younger, when I was about 10 or 11, and going through some intense emotional pain with separation of parents and my father moving away, and a lot of changing of schools, and finding really the only safe space for me was outdoors. And it was a space without words. It was a space where I was with my body and I was with the world in a very simple way, direct contact, and it didn't require a lot of language. And there was something that I think that seed was really planted there for the work that came later.
All right, thank you. So after you graduated with an MFA from New York University, you became a choreographer and a director of projectLIMB. What was the impetus for you to form your own dance company?
Well, it sounds like a bigger deal than it is. It's more just like, okay, I would like to choreograph, and when you start choreographing, people ask you what name you're choreographing under, and I didn't like having it be my name. I wanted to have it because I didn't feel like it was about me. It was about all of us working together. And so the idea of kind of limbs came to mind, limbs being many limbs, and then this idea of the project, both the research but also the projection of the limb into space. So those were sort of the themes. And then, so really it was just a way to explore my own creative ideas through movement, I'd say, with others.
Right. Mm-hmm. So when did you discover freediving, and why was the allure so strong that you were driven to become a certified AIDA freedive instructor? And by the way, what does it mean to be an AIDA freedive instructor?
AIDA is an association of apnea. It's just an acronym, its initials basically, for a French original organization that hosts competitions and manages training protocols and sort of certification levels up to instructor, and even instructor trainer, people who train instructors. So, it's just a it's an agency that works to maintain the level of freediving and support the education and promotion of it, basically.
So
That's
how
what
do
I
you go from dance to free diving?
Well, actually, I had always been in love with the water. I've, been a swimmer and a swim instructor and a scuba diver, and I even liked to swim down and snorkel by myself already. But I would say the first time I was really introduced to dancing underwater was because of some friends of mine that I had in New York. Chisa Hidaka, who runs something called the Dolphin Dance Project, who may be another person you would like to interview in your podcast, actually.
Lovely.
Yeah, she is an amazing artist, and she works with wild dolphins, doing dance with other humans, kind of mixing the dolphin and human movement. And she invited me to come with her to Hawaii and just check out their practice. And that was in 2011. And I went out there, and it was, amazing, but also really intense, having never had any experience like that before. And that was the first time I went freediving. And the first time I went freediving, actually, I didn't understand what was going on, really. There were a bunch of people hanging out on noodles, pool noodles, relaxing. And one guy just did a terrible model of what you should do in freediving and didn't warm up and shot down to the bottom and came up and immediately had a terrible loss of motor control and blackout and was kind
Oh
of like,
my.
and his friend literally said, literally the guy was literally saved his life. And then he just left. But it was very shocking to see that first in your face about freediving. And I'll never forget, because the rope, and I've never seen this again, I don't know where they got this rope, but it literally had like a ruler. It was like every millimeter on the line was visible. So as you go down, you can literally see each millimeter, which is daunting, to see when you're first starting to see each, okay, 10, 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters, 50 centimeters, like that. So that was kind of intense and intimidating, and I to be honest, it kind of turned me off. And it wasn't until 2014 I made a film, and I did more work without fins, without a snorkel, without a mask, just a nose clip. And seeing the images from that, I was like, oh, okay, there's something really important here for me to do and to discover. And that's when I really, okay, and I need to become a better freediver. And I want to share this with people. So if I want to teach, I need to become a freediving instructor, because those are the basic tools you need to share with people first. Mm-hmm. So I did all those things and practiced and did projects and met people. And
Meredith, while you began dancing at an early age, when did you decide to seriously commit to dancing?
I started dancing when I was 3, and then it just regular studio life and tap, jazz, ballet kind of things, and annual performances. And so then when I was in high school, thinking about college and thinking about where I wanted to move my life, I said, I think I just want to keep moving. I just want to move my body. So I also am from a small town in Georgia, and I wanted to move away from that small town in Georgia. And then I went to university in Maine, and I had a wonderful dance program. And once I was in that, I was just hooked. There was also new movement style that I was exposed to, and I said, I'm never going to stop dancing. So high school, and then just college, and after graduation I popped around through some dance companies and whatnot. So
when did your journey intersect with that of Gabriel's, and what was your first introduction to underwater dancing?
We met in January 2019, and he came to Seattle. We were making a piece. projectLIMB was coming, and the company that I was in at that time, he was working with us. So that's when we met. And there's no way you meet Gabriel. There's no way to escape also meeting underwater dance. Although I have always also loved the ocean and water and wanting to be in it and be near it, I just have a different experience. I had some water trauma when I was younger, and so I've always been kind of at the surface, so to speak. And then, of course, when I met Gabe and then figured out like the extent of his underwater dancing, I said, okay, well, let's just keep finding out what that means. And now I know. Now I know.
So I love the Pacific Northwest, and I just moved to Colorado from Maine, so I'm familiar with the water there. And those are two very cold water environments. So
Yeah.
I don't know that well, there are people who spend time in the water in Maine, but I think you have to be a very strong character to spend any length of time in there.
Yeah, I was not in the water in Maine or in the Pacific Northwest, really. So this is also why we live in Sicily. We're not diving in those areas.
Okay. So I know that you host underwater dance workshops in Sicily, and I will definitely post information about the workshops on the womenmindthewater.com site, as well as the link to the projectLIMB site. But I'd like you to offer listeners some insight on how to control your breath underwater.
I would frame it differently.
Okay.
So it's not about controlling your breath. It's about controlling your state. Because what you want is to calm yourself, lower your heart rate, relax, and then the water will be able to meet you in the same way. What often happens is because of lots of reasons, it feels uncomfortable, or you feel nervous, or there's panic, and then you're holding your breath, and all of a sudden you're, okay, I have to breathe, and it's not, you actually don't. You still have plenty of oxygen, your body's fine, but mentally alarms are going off because of other reasons, and then you can't hold your breath any longer. I really believe that everyone could hold their breath for 2 minutes with very little training, like almost immediately, as long as they can relax. And that's, I don't say that like it's a simple thing, because it's not. It's a complicated thing to relax and to lower your state if you don't have practice with it and if you're not familiar. That being said, water does give you feedback that can help you with that.
When I first started dipping my toe into the water, once we moved to Italy, I didn't understand any of the mechanics of how to go and actually dive. There's equalization things that are happening, and as Gabe was mentioning, calming yourself and whatnot. But before I went through any sort of training or anything, we were just out swimming and casually. I wasn't even trying to train, and we actually went over to a buoy, I think, or something, where a mooring, and it was this huge, just blob in the water, and then you look down and there's the chain, and it's all the way down to the bottom, and I'm, snorkel, mask, all the things, and it's my first time, and Gabe's like, okay, well, let's try, this is how you equalize, and think about that, and I tried it, and I pulled down, and I just went and sat on the chain, and I could just look out and see the vastness, and that was one of my first experiences of being underwater, staying, not moving, and just being, and then also had the mask on so I could see, and that was where I said, okay, let's keep doing that.
So how has the underwater dancing affected your thoughts about the ocean and your body?
The aspect of freediving that's really fascinating is having to hold, but at the same time surrender and free yourself, even though there's a hold. Because you're underwater, you're not breathing, and you have to, there is when you hold your breath, you're closing that glottis, And so there's a kind of hold there, and there's a kind of tension that you need to maintain. You can't just, that's not going to work. It's not the practice. But at the same time, you don't have, that's not going to help you at all either. So you have to hold the tiniest, and then the rest you free. And that was an interesting, kind of practice, and also, you become very aware of this area. Like, that's from equalizing though, which maybe you haven't even asked about. And equalizing truly is the art of freediving. It's actually, equalizing is really the art. The holding your breath part is, yes, that's something, but that's not really the challenge in some ways. Eventually, at some level, of course, but in the beginning and in the middle, even in advanced levels, often that's not it. It's really the equalizing, that art form of using as little air as possible to send it into your station tubes, and you have to be very specific. So all of that kind of information and what you're doing with your rib cage and diaphragm, that's been a transformational process for sure, different outlook.
I can see that you're not only becoming one with the water, but becoming inside yourself and aware and relaxed, holding, like you said, holding and releasing at the same time.
You're addicted, you become addicted to the water, and I need to be in the water at some point. I can feel if it's been too long that I haven't been able to been, underwater and in the water with the water. And
yeah, our house gets really weird if we're awake. We're like, there needs to be water time. We need to be out there. We need to do that. We need to get in the ocean.
So Gabriel, since you've begun freediving, have the water conditions in the places that you dance changed at all? Do you see any change or feel any change?
yeah, I mean, I can just speak in terms of water temp. In Sicily, and I'll speak in Sicily because I have a long-term experience there, let's say, because I'm in that water all the time, and I have been for 6 years or 5.5 years. And the water's maybe 2 or 3 degrees warmer. So that's pretty extreme.
Yes, it
considering...
is. So as you've developed a relationship with the ocean, have you also developed a sense of responsibility to address some of the impacts that are affecting the water?
Really, the purpose of the work is about showing a relationship with water in a different way. So it's not just about beautiful dancing, in my perspective. It's also about how humans are a part of the water. We have a shared identity, really. And so that's my practice of working. And to me, that's really what I want people to see, is that it's not separate, it's not the trash can, it's not outside, it is literally part of us. And so, yeah.
Okay. So I usually close by asking guests to tell listeners what they can do to help preserve our ocean as a place of wonder and as a valuable ecosystem. What thoughts might you contribute to this conversation?
Yeah, for just every time you're at the beach or in the water, bring something out of it, as in the litter that you see. Leave the wildlife, don't harass it, respect the things that are there in its home. And we're always hauling things out and putting it in the buoy, and then we have our garbage that we bring out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's really, most of our impact is as consumers. So being really mindful of the kind of fish you're eating and the kind of products you're buying and how it relates to the ocean and the furthering of its destruction, Of course, it's a sort of hypocritical game. We live in a society that is as it is, and I'm not going to be able to transform the climate policy for the United States, and the level of your advocacy is going to vary. But that's something everyone can do. You can take a look at what you're consuming and the choices you're making, and that has a big impact on the ocean, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'd like to remind my listeners that I've been speaking with Gabriel Forestieri and Meredith Sallee. This creative couple share the beauty of dance and the ocean through their underwater multi-dimensional productions. Gabriel and Meredith are the latest guests on the Women Mind the Water Art of It series podcast. The series can be viewed on womenmindthewater.com, Museum on Main Street, and YouTube. An audio version of this podcast is available on womenmindthewater.com, on iTunes, and Spotify. Women Mind the Water is grateful to Jane Rice for the use of her song, Women of Water. All rights for the Women Mind the Water name and logo belong to Pam Ferris-Olsen. This is Pam Ferris-Olsen.